In Star Wars Defense Systems laser experiments, this is the first shuttle to include this type of test in the flight plan.
Package spun out of the cargo bay and sped off to high Earth orbit. Later today, Discovery becomes the target for a laser beam being fired from Hawaii. It's part of a test for Star Wars space defense on target, some 22,000 miles above the equator. Discovery's crew is now 3 for 3, and a fourth and final satellite will be sent aloft tomorrow. A full day still ahead for Discovery, including an afternoon test of a space weapons laser tracking system. It'll be the first space test of part of the $26 billion Star Wars program.
A test of Star Wars technology, but as Dan Molina reports tonight from the Johnson Space Center, the test was a fizzle.
Flying at a maximum.
As they headed toward Hawaii, Discovery's crew was the first to realize that the Star Wars laser experiment was not going to work.
And I think there must be another number incorrect in that cap because it looks like we're pointing almost a tail at where we want to be pointing.
Mission Control then confirmed that the reflector on the shuttle that the laser was supposed to hit was pointed toward space, not toward the ground.
Steve and I are taking some little amount of static from our commander and PLT.
Roger that, John, but I'll bet you're not getting half the static that the flight director is passing out.
This ground station on the island of Maui did fire the laser at Discovery, and the crew could see it, but little was accomplished.
Houston, since this isn't working, can we go back the other attitude inverters to save fuel?
The laser apparently did hit the shuttle, which was traveling at a speed of 17,400 miles per hour. But the major point of the test was to bounce the light beam back to Maui, and that could not be done because the shuttle was out of position. This was not a setback for Star Wars research. It was a NASA mistake made during the planning for this mission. The crew was given a wrong set of coordinates to position Discovery for the test. On Saturday, there'll be another chance to catch the laser beam properly. Dan Molina, NBC News at the Johnson Space Center, Houston.
A third of satellite made it into orbit, but a Star Wars defense experiment didn't go quite as well. Frank Seltzer has this on the astronaut's day.
Mission Control awakened the crew of Discovery after their second night in space with a song. Commander Dan Brandenstein thanked Houston for the wake-up call, adding,
You were half right. The sky isn't tumbling, but the Earth is moving.
Well, we're glad to hear that the laws of physics are still in order.
Not only were the laws of physics in order, but so was the last of the 3 satellites on Discovery. A $100 million Telstar satellite for AT&T launched on time, keeping Discovery's perfect record. After the deployment, Discovery's crew was to make the first space test of the so-called Star Wars defense. A low-powered laser shot from Hawaii up to the shuttle was to be reflected back to Earth. Scientists wanted to see how far the light scatters in the round trip to space, so they could develop a highly precise tracking system that one day could be used to destroy enemy missiles. But a problem had the shuttle pointing the wrong way as it passed Hawaii, so the test didn't work. They'll try again Saturday. This flight marks a momentous event in the American space program. The 100th American to go into space is on Discovery. The question is, who? Commander Brandenstein staged a ceremony and ruled that Steve Nagel beat out Shannon Lucid by inches, or maybe a nose.
Well, I sat 3 inches behind Shannon. My nose is about 3.5 inches longer than hers is. So it's still a debatable point in my mind anyway, but I thank you very much for this great honor, and especially the cake, which I'll gladly eat.
Compliments went to the chef and regrets that Mission Control couldn't be there to share the dessert with them. But Brandenstein added he knew Mission Control would find time to have their cake and eat it too. Frank Seltzer, CNN Space Watch at the Johnson Space Center.
Study black holes in space. The Spartan satellite was designed by NASA engineers to gather information about a mysterious mass in the middle of our universe. Scientists think it might be a black hole, a place where gravity is so intense that smaller stars can get sucked in, that even light cannot escape. Spartan is to take radiation recordings and bring the data back to Discovery on Saturday. This is the 4th satellite the shuttle crew has launched during what is turning out to be one of the smoothest missions ever.
Pictures of deep inside the Milky Way galaxy. The satellite will be retrieved Saturday in hopes of learning more about the mysterious black hole. A film shot by past shuttle astronauts premieres this week in Washington. Charles Crawford has that story.
The dream is alive. It's the first IMAX film to be shot on location, outer space. Projected on a screen 5 stories high and 7 stories wide, the audience is treated to a spectacular window seat view of a ride aboard the space shuttle. The IMAX technique is a revolutionary departure from conventional filmmaking.
The idea we had was that if we took 70mm film and turned it on its side and made it go horizontally, we could expand the frame. That was the concept. So that, as I say, we produce a high-fidelity image on a very large screen.
The result is each frame contains 10 times more information than a frame of 35mm film. It takes 1,000 feet of film to produce just 3 minutes of motion picture as the film moves at a speed of 330 feet per minute. A state-of-the-art unit projects the film only, while the sound portion is recorded and played back on 6-track 35mm tape. For the audience, the result is truly a larger-than-life experience.
The basic thing is it makes the audience feel that they're in the picture. You are in it, you are seeing a picture that is very much larger than you've ever seen before, and it's higher fidelity, so it feels like the real world.
Visitors to the National Air and Space Museum in the nation's capital will be the first to see the footage shot by 14 astronauts on 3 separate missions in 1984.
We'd never played with anything that huge. I mean, an 85-pound camera that processes 1,000 feet of film in 3 minutes. We had quite a challenge and a lot of fun trying to make it work in zero-G.
This is the 3rd IMAX film made expressly for the National Air and Space Museum. And by the end of 1986, it's estimated 20 million people will have seen it in 40 theaters in this country and elsewhere around the world. Charles Crawford, CNN.
The scientific searcher into the Milky Way on Thursday. Tom Mintier has more on the day in space.
The Spartan satellite weighs more than a ton, but in space it appeared to be as light as a shoebox. Suspended at the end of Discovery's 50-foot-long robot arm, the satellite was released gently to float in space.
And Houston, on the release, it would look steady as a rock, according to JL.
Roger, look good down here also.
If all goes as planned, the Spartan satellite will spend 45 hours recording X-rays from the heart of the Milky Way galaxy. Scientists hope to learn how galaxies are formed and if black holes are common in space. The satellite costs $3.5 million, but is reusable, provided NASA is successful in retrieving it on Saturday. The space shuttle will also attempt to reflect a laser beam again on Friday. The Wednesday tests of the so-called Star Wars defense system failed when wrong numbers were entered into the shuttle's navigational system and Discovery wound up pointed in the wrong direction. The shuttle crew reported it could see the blue laser from space, but scientists on the ground were not able to track the shuttle because the mirror was out of position. On Maui, the test brought out dozens of demonstrators opposed to the high-tech testing. Most carried signs or dressed for the occasion. The protesters will probably be on hand again when the test is repeated. NASA says the laser firing could be moved to Saturday if it fails again on this next try. Tom Mintier, CNN Space Watch.
The craft served as a fast-moving target this morning for a test based in Hawaii of a laser system being developed as part of the Star Wars anti-missile system. The shuttle crew sent back pictures of the pulsating beam accompanied by music from the 1812 Overture.
20 miles of space today, aiming for an 8-inch mirror on the Space Shuttle Discovery. It was a repeat of the Star Wars experiment that was tried earlier this week and failed. Dan Molina reports there were some problems again today.
As Discovery approached Hawaii, there was exasperating news from the ground. At this normally tranquil Air Force station on the island of Maui, there were 50-knot winds.
We're going to go ahead and make an attempt to track you, and we'll just have to wait and see whether the winds cooperate.
At Mission Control, there were fears the fierce weather would prevent the station from firing a laser at Discovery, fears the Star Wars experiment would fail for a second time.
We still want you to go ahead and go through with the procedure as it's outlined. We'll advise you at Hawaii the status.
But even with the winds, the laser was fired successfully. This was the view from the shuttle. A jubilant crew celebrated with the thundering chords of Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture. In this test, the laser pierced the atmosphere and struck a reflector on Discovery, then bounced back to Earth. This test will help determine whether it's possible to destroy incoming enemy missiles with lasers. Dan Molina, NBC News at the Johnson